The Bucks were shorthanded in Miami, potentially as expected on a back-to-back. And what do you do when you got no Giannis, no Chris Middleton, and no Joe Ingles? Lack of facilitation. You just try and shoot your way to a victory. And for the most part, the Bucks hit their threes and they did a pretty good job. But ultimately, they fell just short in a game that maybe was more competitive than I thought it could have been. But we're going to break it down. And of course, look ahead to the second game in Miami coming up on the weekend.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me, the founder of BrewHoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, as the Bucks fall just short in Miami, 108-102. We're going to break this game down. But first of all, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every single day. I was hoping we would have another winning podcast post-game show to do, but it's not quite the case. But we're going live either way. So subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on your audio platform. We really appreciate it, and get involved in the conversation. Now, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. So, Frank, you've said this before. We've discussed it before. The offensive strategy can probably be predicted entering a game where you've got no Giannis, no Chris. And I mentioned Joe just because he has been one of the facilitators in recent games here. The Bucks were going to let it fly. They attempt around 38 three-point shots per game on the season. Today, they get up 57. They actually knock down 22. And you get 15 three-point makes between Jordan Nwora, Jevon Carter, and AJ Green. Just by those numbers alone, you have to say, well, the offensive plan may have worked. Unfortunately, they weren't able to slow the Heat down, particularly in the second half, as it felt that the Bucks were just barely hanging on.
Yeah, I mean, this was it was actually a below average game from the Miami Heat overall in terms of offense. But the Bucks accomplished the seemingly impossible task of hitting, what was it, 22? For some reason I thought it was 21, but yeah,
21 for 57.
22 threes, and you score 102 points, which tells you that they didn't do jack other than, jack threes. And I was just looking at the shot chart, and I mean, the Heat, are a team that has frustrated Giannis a lot over the years and prevented him from getting to the rim where he wants to be. And tonight, can you guess how many shots the Bucks took in the restricted area tonight? Total shots.
So 57 of their 87 shot attempts were three. So I'm gonna say 14.
They were 1 for 2. How is that possible? That's like hilarious. How is that even possible?
I can't even think what was the make. I should be able to remember this momentous occasion of the Bucks getting a basket.
It was probably that Bobby Portis alley-oop off the inbound where they just didn't cover him and he kind of ran to the rim and laid it in. Yeah, I mean, granted, there's some. It's probably a little bit of judgment, right, in some of these because these are not tracking stats live. But I have never seen a number like that is just kind of mind-boggling to be 1 for 2 at the rim for an entire game is just crazy.
50%, Frank, could be worse.
Yeah. They were in the zeroth. Is that the way to say it? Percentile on cleaning the glass in terms of frequency of shots at the rim, and they were in the 4th percentile in terms of accuracy because they were 50%, which is horrible as well.
Right.
Miami was only in the 3rd percentile because they only had 17% of their shots in the rim, and they were only 6 of 11. So, Brook Lopez offensively looked very tired and looked like a guy that is 34 and playing on the second night of the back-to-back. He just didn't have anything offensively tonight, which we'll forgive given how good he was last night. But, he protected the rim pretty well. I mean, hell, even Bobby Portis got a couple of stops at the rim, Victor Oladipo. Bad sign for Victor Oladipo that he couldn't score on Bobby Portis at the rim. Bobby had a block at the rim. It was man, what's going on? Mamu had a stop contest at the rim. It was man, Heat are not exactly lighting the world on fire, but yeah, I mean, the Bucks it was really just 3-pointer bust, which, like you said, I mean, if you told us before the game, you'd go see them go 22 of 57 from three, and Miami would not really have a big offensive night, you would have said, wow, that bodes really well. But, in spite of the shooting, and also they actually did better than the Heat in terms of turnovers. They only had 11 turnovers, right? 11 or 12 turnovers. Heat had, I think, 1 or 2 more. Bucks had, I think, 10 steals. They had very active hands, especially in that first half. Felt like, how many steals did Jevon Carter end up having? It felt like he had like 5 steals or something like that. I don't think he did.
3.
But yeah, they were able to get out, and Jevon Carter shot that unbelievable. He was 6 of 14, just gunning all night. I think he was probably really happy that Giannis wasn't playing because he had no obligation to pass to anyone in transition. He could just dribble it up and shoot those pull-up transition threes, which we've seen him show a proclivity for previously, and he really got into it tonight. So, yeah, I mean, as far as, silver linings go, I mean, the bench scoring was pretty wild, right? I think they had like 51 points or something like that scoring off the bench. And Jrue Holiday was really good, 7 out of 10, I think 24 points. And did he get to double-digit assists? I think he did. So Brooke or Jrue, after a really good game last night, comes through again. So you had a lot of the kind of like, raw materials of what you think you would need to win a game like this, even without Giannis, Chris, Joe Ingles, Grayson Allen also out with the sprained ankle. But, you literally did nothing else at all night. And again, it just felt like the Bucks, they had that 15-point lead early. Everything seemed to be going their way, but it was really, again, it was just sort of the mirage of outlier shooting. And we saw it against the Hawks as well. I mean, they had the big lead, but it was purely because they were hitting a bunch of threes. They weren't doing anything else inside last night in Atlanta either. I shouldn't say that, but they were, they had a huge volume of shots inside last night compared to what they did tonight. Tonight was comical in terms of the lack of paint attacks. And again, some of that, I mean, the Heat play the most like zone defense of like any team in history. And we saw a bit of that in the first half and second half. So obviously the Bucks probably would have felt like, hey, great, play more zone defense. Let us jack up more open threes. We're not even going to try to attack the rim in those types of scenarios. But yeah, I mean, again, not a game we will remember 2 weeks from now, let alone 2 months from now. So kind of feels like one of these games where you kind of just say, all right, moving on. And now you just have to hope that you can get the second game of the 2 game set on Saturday with Giannis presumably back. And I don't know. I'm not going to expect Chris Middleton to play, but who knows? In theory, I still don't really fully understand the mechanics of it. Chris, Thanasis, and Wes were quote unquote sent down to the herd today while they were in Miami, which usually means that the herd come and practice with, basically they give some bodies in the herd practice with some of the Bucks veterans to get them some practice time. The herd play in Cleveland tomorrow night. So like, I don't know what that means. Like normally when it's we're talking about like home scenarios, right? Where they can just shoot down from Oshkosh. Did they jump on a plane and fly to Miami as a fun little field trip just so they could get Chris some game action? I have no idea what that means, but certainly not a bad sign as far as Chris continuing to work his way back.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm not sure what to expect about this game on the weekend, particularly being an afternoon game. We've discussed that schedule stuff. Even Marcus Johnson sounded very excited about the fact that he's going to be able to spend at least the next 36-ish hours in Miami in winter in Wisconsin. So I'm sure they'll get some sun tomorrow. But I do want to ask you more about probably Miami. They're in a fascinating spot as well. We did our trade deadline podcast last week, but Miami just a curious franchise to me and kind of rivals. The Bucks obviously played them a lot in the postseason. So I want to ask you about that after I talk about our friends at LinkedIn Jobs, because as a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the 3-point shot. No, it depends on team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have skills, values, experiences to help you achieve those goals that you're after. So you can identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find those qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Firstly, before we entirely move on from this game and look a little more big picture, and it's not going to surprise anyone listening to this podcast, I don't think anyone was desperate for this. Marjon Beauchamp, a rough night. Now, he's obviously a rookie. I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know there when I say that. But it's interesting, the back-to-back stuff with him. We've seen him have some pretty nice moments recently, Frank, but nothing really seemed to happen for him. Obviously, the shot wasn't there, even though he only took 3 shots, 0 for 2 from 3 on this one. But even when he tried to put the ball on the floor, it didn't quite work out as well as what we've seen in the last week. And let's face it, certainly in my opinion, he's had a great couple of weeks here. But this was a tough one on a back-to-back in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a spell. What was it in the second or the third quarter? At the third quarter, I think, where I think he got a steal and he starts driving on the floor at, I don't know if it was Gabe Vincent or it was 1v1, and he like set himself up for like the most awkward spin move and just lost the ball, and it was just like it was ugly. And then compounds it by taking a quick shot, misses it. I don't know if it was the next possession or the possession after, and then just lets a guy blow by him. I mean, it was a bad night. I think the only positive thing he did was get that steal, which he immediately turned over. So it was just the only guy who didn't score a point tonight. And again, I mean, this is kind of what you hope, is that as guys get experience, like they smooth out the kind of peaks and valleys, or well, the peaks you don't have to smooth out, but the valleys at least, right? Like you cut down on some of these really bad games. I just think back to early in the season. I think it was after the Oklahoma City game where he, has the big scoring night and that big win. And then the next, I think 3 or 4 games, he goes like 1 for 12 combined, and he was just really bad, right? Had a kind of chance to try to build on that a little bit as the Bucks were dinged up and, needed guys to get minutes, and just kind of didn't, and then basically he kind of fell out of the rotation thereafter. So I mean, again, like we'll see. I don't know how long he can stay in the rotation. I think if Grayson Allen is out for, another couple of games or something with this sprained ankle, we haven't really heard any clarity on how long he might be out. But normal humans, who are not Giannis, usually miss at least, a few days with turned ankles. So, I'm guessing we'll continue to see a little bit more of him this weekend. So again, you just get back on the horse and hope that you stay aggressive and don't let, a bad game like tonight kind of ruin it. So anyway, but do we want to talk a little, give some shine to AJ Green as well? I mean, it's career high in scoring for him tonight.
Yeah.
Just kind of, obviously he was part of the 3-point bomb brigade. And I mean, it's kind of those things like he's, defensively, he obviously, I think, has limitations. But I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he's usually in the right spot. It's just, again, the kind of lack of physicality and athleticism that ultimately does him in. But, it's like Marjon's probably the worst guy on the team at getting over screen. Well, Giannis is the worst guy at getting over screens on the team. But among kind of like the wing-sized guys, I'd say Marjon's probably the worst at getting over screens. And I kind of wonder if like part of the reason why Bud has him defending smaller guys so much is in order to just like force him to have to like get reps in practice and just get better at it. But that's kind of just like one of those things, like AJ Green, like, he just works at it, just kind of does what he can. And there will always be some of those limitations, but the guy can shoot. And I think he came to this game shooting 40% from 3, and he's not going to do pretty much anything else offensively other than shoot threes. But, that's okay, especially on a night like this where you really just, can use anybody who can make a shot. And hell, I mean, the Bucks this season, right? Like a guy that can just make threes at a reliable clip. That's a very valuable skill set to have, and he's not bashful. So, a lot of young guys struggle to figure out like how do they come in and in limited minutes get warm right away. But he's been able to do that, right? And that's kind of probably the biggest thing that allows guys like him to actually have a chance at sticking around a little while in the league, is just, again, being able to do this without needing 30 minutes a night and 12 shots, 13 shots, or whatever that they're used to getting in college that they'd get in the G League, et cetera, because you're just not going to get those opportunities playing for an NBA team.
And AJ Green, and I think you mentioned it on the last pod, and I've said it, in the preseason, both of us were kind of like, I don't know, like what the point of this two-way is. He's definitely contributed more than I already thought he would. I still don't think that he's going to play in the postseason, but hey, on a night like tonight, the thing that's impressive with him, and Marjon, to be clear, but AJ Green's just a better shooter, but they're not shy. Like, they're just coming in at NBA level and just firing it up, which, is something. We got a comment here in the stream, which is fascinating. And you mentioned
and by the way, he's not eligible. He's not eligible to play in the playoffs anyway, because their G Leaguers are once again, or two-way guys are once again playoff ineligible. They may change that, but as they've done a couple times in recent years, but neither AJ nor Mamu are even playoff eligible at this point.
No, but we do see, and I certainly get it a lot in the streams, like, just trade Grayson Allen and play AJ Green. Like, there is a way that he could obviously do it, but I don't think, that's probably not a way I would be going. But R.R. Smith in the stream, and I've said it before, Mamu last year, I know the Bucks didn't win a title, but he would prefer to be playing, no doubt about it. But you just get to sit on the bench in street clothes, watch the NBA playoffs. Pretty damn sweet gig, this two-way stuff. R.R. Smith 30 says, Jevon scored more tonight, but I feel like he started chucking and it took the team out of our offense. So, honestly, on a night like tonight,
what offense?
You're right. So tonight,
I mean, I'm not always crazy about it, but on a night like this, I don't really care as much. And what did you have? Like 18 points on 16 shots. Again, not a great efficient night in terms of offense, but again, like they have so little creation that I didn't like all those pull up threes in transition. I didn't really mind them that much. And obviously he made a number of them, and that was kind of when they got out to that double digit lead in kind of the early second quarter or whatever it was. So I don't know. Yeah, these are the nights where I'm not gonna lose a lot of sleep over kind of parsing blame for stuff. And obviously he wouldn't be shooting that many shots if the Bucks are closer to full strength.
Yeah, I think that's right. We see him do it from time to time when you are closer to full strength as well. And I'm not, thrilled about that shot without one pass, just pulling up for three. But at the same time, there's been other stretches where he's been super hesitant to shoot. So it's probably just finding that balance. You need him to shoot if he's going to be out on the floor. Like, he has to be a guy that's going to be willing and wanting to shoot an open three. So I think there's a balance there for Jevon Carter. And Gabe Vincent, by the way, is starting to etch himself into, buck killer.
Buck killer. Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe that this was a career high. I'm just like, doesn't he always do this against the Bucks?
Didn't he drop 50 against the Bucks last time they played? Yeah, I mean, he knocks down those threes. He was 5 for 11 from three, had 28 points in this game. And Jordan Nwora, I mean, we already mentioned all the guys combined, but he hasn't played much lately. Hasn't had too many great moments, certainly in recent times. But there was a stretch during the third quarter in this game where the Bucks were really trying to claw their way, or just hang on. They were just scrapping to hang on. That, again, as we've discussed, they were basically only taking threes, and Jordan had some quick buckets in this in the late in the third quarter, early in the fourth, that at least gave me some sort of faint hope that they were going to pull something off if Jrue or Brook Lopez could do something in the fourth quarter, but didn't happen. But Jordan Nwora had 16 points in 27 minutes, and I reckon the 27 minutes is close to a season high. I might be thereabouts. Hey, what do you think of the officiating tonight, Frank?
I really didn't think about the officiating at all. Are you teaming me up for a Bet Online transition here or something like that? Is this a setup that I wasn't aware of?
Well, I'm not surprised that you didn't have too many complaints with the officiating, because our friends at betonline.net, which is the number one source for all your betting and sports info need, they have the info of the fan bases that on Twitter are complaining the most about the officials. So the Bucks, 6.07%. This is some advanced analytics. 6.07% of tweets angry about the officials, directing it at the officials. The Warriors, number one fans for just being the big time whiners, 11.76%, and the Chicago Bulls not far behind, and nobody's surprised about that. We see these Bucks and Bulls games, and you know that they're complaining about the officials. So betonline.net just providing us the info we need, because they also have all the odds, lines, and everything in between, along with analysis, news, stats, and some interesting stuff like this officiating info here. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Where do you think the Heat are at overall, Frank? They're 23-20. Kyle Lowry looks like he's probably over the hill. He hasn't had a great season at this point in time. They've still got Bam and Jimmy as their two best players. Do you, as you're looking ahead to the postseason and what could potentially happen, do you see them as any type of threat as currently constructed in the East?
I really thought coming into the year, the fact that they had literally no power forwards, right? They lose PJ Tucker. And like coming into the season, the plan was just like, I guess Caleb Martin is our starting power forward with Jimmy Butler, right? And Jimmy obviously can play bigger. And it's pretty remarkable looking at the numbers for them this year. They're, I think, 5th in defense. They've been a really good defensive rebounding team. Like they have not played like a team that is undersized, right? Bam's great, but he's not like a big, center. He, blocks like 0.8 shots a game. He's really good defensively, but he's not like a typical like kind of Brook Lopez style defensive anchor. So again, it's just Eric Spoelstra, just kind of smoke mirrors and everything else, getting them to a really good place defensively. But the issue for them is like the Bucks, on the offensive end. I think they're around the same spot as the Bucks in terms of their offensive struggles. And, even on tonight, like tonight, where they obviously come away with the win, not a great offensive showing. Although in fairness, they were also missing a bunch of guys. They still had 2 All-Stars and their 2 best players and Jimmy and Bam. So obviously that's better than what the Bucks could claim. But I don't know. I don't think their kind of talent level is just quite high enough to be a legit contender. But when we saw it last year, they, finished with the first seed in the East. So I think they certainly have a run in them. And I've been a little surprised that they haven't been better. Hero's had a good year. Jimmy is still capable of being Jimmy. And, Bam Adebayo is having a really big scoring year. So you kind of put some of those things there and it's like, man, you think that they wouldn't have this big drop off offensively. But again, obviously they're relying a lot on some of these role players and, sometimes that just doesn't kind of pan out the way you want it. So I don't know. Ultimately at the end of the day, as good as Jimmy was in the playoffs last year, I don't know. I'm still a little skeptical that like Jimmy Butler is just going to be like the best player in a playoff series against, the typical like East superstar types, like against a Giannis or an Embiid or a Tatum or something like that. But I guess you can't count them out, right? Would you, if you're as a Bucks fan, would I want to see the Heat in the first round, even having swept them a couple of years ago? Not particularly, especially if they're like a low seed and you have a chance to maybe get a different low seed. They would not be the kind of team that I'd want to face as like a 7 seed, against a 2 or something like that.
Yeah, unless the Bucks do something, radical that we all want to see at the trade deadline.
Like become good again?
I was going to say trade for Bryn Forbes. But anyway, a couple notes that I want to bring, and then you can say whatever you want to say before we wrap this thing up and head directly into the weekend. By the way, the next game against Miami, I know it's an afternoon game, but 5 o'clock in the morning, tip off on Sunday morning here in Melbourne. Now, I know our friends in Europe, you guys are up. You're watching games all through the night, but I'm not used to it, and I'm a little bit soft. So I can complain about that. 2 things. Tonight, broadcast gold. Lisa talking about a 500 and something streak of sellouts in Miami, and Marcus goes, yeah, I noticed there's lots of fans dressed as red and yellow seats. and it was half empty, let's be honest. I know they always show up late, but this was a pretty small crowd.
First off, they showed a couple of like Bucks fans and I immediately was like, oh man, again, like the people showing up in Giannis jerseys. Who knows if this is their first game of the season, right? You show up on the second night of a back-to-back. It's kind of like, guys, you really should not have expected to see Giannis tonight. So it was definitely a quality of game that I think deserved a stereotypically bad, small Miami Heat crowd. But yeah, the sellout streak is pretty funny. I mean, that let's just say charitably, they've been a late arriving crowd even during the LeBron years, and I would say in recent years, and again, I'm not saying like Fiserv is the best building in the world in terms of crowd intensity and things like that, but Miami pretty notorious for people not showing up for these supposed sellout games.
Now, also, we buried the lead for this podcast. The number one story in Bucksland right now, and I've seen plenty of people tweeting about it.
The water, Bud's water.
Yes, I was trying to be serious about it, but let's be real. And let me set the scene for anyone that doesn't know. Our great friend Eric Name was trying to ask Bud a question post-game in Atlanta last night. As Bud always does, if you watch the press conferences or you've been in there, he'll crack a bottle of water and just wet the old whistle before he gives an answer. He cracked it. He had a sip. And as soon as this H2O, we think it was H2O, touched his tongue, he was disgusted. And not only was he disgusted at the taste of whatever it was he was drinking, he gave the bottle, I assume maybe it was Dan Smichek that was alongside him, Bucks PR, and said, get this bottle of water out of the vicinity of where I am because I don't even want to be near this bottle of water. What the hell was going on with this water? What could possibly have been the problem? Well, you're on mute.
I don't think you can actually see the logo in it, but I think based on the color of the bottle and the top being green, I think everybody's assumption is that it's a Dasani water. And Dasani is just catching a lot of strays over all this. A lot of people saying like, yeah, Dasani's crap.
Especially with Bucks fans, because people keep asking what's wrong with Chris. And I say, that's a knee.
Oh my God. Was this whole line of discussion purely so you could get that joke off? Or
not at all, because I wasn't going to. But I wasn't going to mention the company. But now you did. It just came to the head. That's some comedic genius.
Hey, potential future sponsor, Dasani Water. We'll sing their praises if they become a sponsor, right? But yeah, apparently I did see it. If I drink water, I just drink like filtered water from our refrigerator. I don't drink like bottled water. So I had no idea that like Dasani was like had this like super negative perception apparently. So it's been kind of funny just seeing all these people like ripping on this bottled water brand, which to me is like, I just don't notice the difference between bottled water. But yeah, and the other thing too was, Bryce Christensen, a friend of the podcast, who does he does the sign language, American Sign Language interpretation for the Bucks. I saw, a version of the video where he's doing the sign language, and I was kind of like, oh, I wonder how like Bryce would sign what Bud is saying. And then I was like, he doesn't need to. Everything you need to know about what Bud was thinking and feeling about drinking that water was conveyed perfectly by his face. So, Bryce can add that to his lexicon. We should have that added to American Sign Language. I just drank some terrible Dasani water. Like that in sign language is just the face that Bud made after that drink. So, and it's funny watching it because like Eric is sort of like doesn't know if how much time he needs to give Bud to recover from tasting that terrible water. But anyway,
now
a moment of levity.
Let me just say though, and I am disappointed in Eric. Like, and maybe I'm not as look. Eric maybe is just better at his job and a little more serious than I am. I'm a little bit on the silly side of things, but the fact that he didn't ask what was wrong, like that was just really like, what's wrong with the water? Like, it's just like the most obvious. I can't believe he didn't ask.
Or like, you okay?
Yeah, like just anything to just the Bucks won. He's in a fine mood. It should be. So come on, Eric. That was disappointing. Hey, before we go, one more for you because it's in the stream and it's Eliza, who we see in the stream every single night. We love it. Yeah, we did the trade stuff, and Eliza's mentioning Jordan Clarkson. And again, we spoke about him on this trade podcast we did last week. And I think he actually, and I referenced, I said, well, the thing about him is if you're talking about a scorer, it's probably an upgrade on Grayson just in the explosiveness. I think he had 15 points in the fourth quarter against Cleveland. a couple of nights ago.
I watched the last like 2 minutes of this game. He had a 7-point possession. He got a 4-point play in which Karis LeVert like got under him on a 3. It was a really weird play. He like got a rebound or something and took a step back. So he's like going backwards and then shoots the 3 and then immediately gets his momentum going back forwards and kicks out his leg to draw a landing spot foul on Karis LeVert, which, kind of tough look for Karis LeVert. So he gets the 4-point play and then they keep the ball because it's a flagrant landing spot thing. And then he draws a 3-point foul on Karis LeVert on the same possession and makes all 3 free throws. So he scored 7 points without the Cavs touching the ball.
That's what we like.
And then the Cavs missed, and then he got the ball back, and then he went down the lane and hit a runner. So he had 9 points in 2 possessions, which that doesn't happen very much. I'm curious how many 7-point possessions there have been in NBA history. I'm going to go ahead and say probably no one has topped that single number. But I did just look at his numbers. He's up to 36% on the season from 3. So his number has come up a little bit. He's a 34% career 3-point shooter. Last year, he was 32%, takes almost 8 a game. So yeah, he is not shy. He's been between 53 and 55% 52 and 55% the last 4 years while he's been in Utah on 2-point shots. So, he takes a fair number of 2-point shots, and not that he's like getting the rim all the time, but is reasonably accurate. And this year he's gotten to the line a lot more, almost 4 a game. In previous years, he was right around 2. So he's having a very good season, 4.5 assists a game. He's up at about 3 turnovers a game as well. But, he's played very well. And I was on Seth Partnow's podcast a couple weeks back, and, we were kind of talking about this, and he said, and Seth made the point that like Clarkson's actually like defending and trying, this year under Will Hardy. And so, to whatever extent you may sacrifice something defensively, he's actually been pretty good. And, you look at the on-off ratings, they've been pretty solid as well the last couple of years. So I don't know. I mean, the latest quote unquote intel is Utah is not looking to trade him and they want to re-sign him in the offseason. I don't know. I think I've heard speculation that the owner loves him and whatever other stuff. So, again, Jordan Clarkson, probably for multiple reasons, not a guy that I would expect the Bucks to be able to be in a position to acquire. But would he be an intriguing addition? Yeah, I think for sure, especially, for nights like this where the Bucks are seriously lacking in firepower.
One other thing with Clarkson, as Jacob points out, every time he gets fouled, he squares up to fight, and he like this. He's ready to go. He's yet to throw a punch, but he squares up in comical fashion. So shout out to Jordan Clarkson for that. Make sure you listen to the Game to Game NBA podcast as well. Recaps from right around the NBA from all the local experts. You can get Game to Game on your Locked On NBA feed. So make sure you subscribe to that as well. Should we call it a weekend, Frank? You got nothing else you want to throw in the mix?
No, I'm good. I feel like we've probably spent enough time talking in and around one of the more random regular season games of the season. So, let's bury this one and not speak of it again. How about that?
Sounds good. Frank, see you on the weekend. I'm sure we'll at least be chatting during this 5 a.m. tip-off Melbourne time. It'll be up in the air. Who will be more sluggish, the Bucks or me? We will find out. But I can't wait. We'll speak to you guys soon.